What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. As always, I'm flanked by two gentlemen that we love dearly, and we're going to introduce, despite the fact you already know them. Let's get into it. First up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all. He is the senior editor of Sherdog.com and my man, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's up?
Hey, I'm doing really well. We had a super packed UFC card happen on Saturday, and I can't wait to kind of dive into all the fallout from it.
Absolutely. And of course, every week the panel is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also, my good friend, Mr. J. Petri. J, what's up?
You know, it's really kind of interesting to me how the sport will just stop when there's a blockbuster UFC show that's going to happen. The other organizations will just stop and watch, and everybody will just kind of sit back and enjoy that. It's interesting. Like you picture like other sports, like there's a big like the big 4:30 game, the so and so and the so and so NFL game. Well, there's other games going on at the same time. You know, other than primetime shows. You know, it's there's just a crowded field. Whereas this UFC show this past weekend, 267, everybody kind of stopped, and I think that was a good thing for a lot of us to be able to just singularly focus on all of the ridiculous things that happened this past weekend. And obviously, one of the most ridiculous things happened involving the preliminary fighter, Alan Nascimento. I'm kidding. The stat of the week is Glover Teixeira, 42 years old. He is a UFC champion. He is the oldest first-time champ in UFC history. 42, stat of the week. And it's the answer, too.
Yeah, man, we definitely got to give Glover Teixeira some serious bouquets, roses, flowers, all that beautiful stuff for pulling off a historic feat. But before we jump into that, the card overall, I was digging this. For a variety of reasons, probably chief among them the start time on the West Coast here in Los Angeles area. I woke up around, my son wakes me up around 7 o'clock every morning, 6:37, somewhere in that. He's normally doing something to wake me up. So I wake up with him. I take him out to the living room. We, read and sing little nursery rhymes and everything for a little bit. And then what do you know? It is fight time. And I got to watch all the fights. I got to do this without disrupting anything, sacrificing anything as far as the family is concerned. We went out, had dinner, spent time with the kids and wife, everything. Fantastic. Please, we need more of this. Were you guys feeling the early start time?
I was. I had a couple sick days leading up to the event. And so at the 10:30 start time on the East Coast kind of loomed large, thinking, oh boy, am I going to be ready for this? And waking up and getting ready for the show, it felt like, I don't know, just the dawn broke a little lighter, just like, oh, we're going to have the fights done by 5:30. And then I can actually have a Saturday to get my work done, which will then give me a Sunday to have mostly off because it's Halloween. Granted, that didn't end up working out in my favor, but the theory and the idea that I appreciated that idea that I could have that time to do it. And next time it rolls around, next time gadget, I liked it. Duffy, did the early start time affect you differently because your schedule is quite different from ours?
Well, it was perfect for me because I sort of met the card halfway. I woke up about an hour and a half into the card and just watched the fights. Do you know how many ads for Peloton and ulcerative colitis medications and the Home Depot I got to skip? It was beautiful.
No, I'm jealous.
Man, there was one commercial that they ran that I actually thought was pretty dope, but I can't remember what it is now. I'm surprised I didn't tweet about it because normally I tweet about how stupid most of the commercials are. So I should tweet about the positive commercials that were pretty cool. And this is someone who I majored in advertising in college, so whatever. Anyway,
I have a question, and you don't have to answer it. This is more of a rhetorical question. Is Peloton a weird cult that comes with a bike, or is it a bike that comes with a weird cult?
That is a good question.
Yes, it is.
Depends on what the CrossFit guys have to say. Like that's a showdown for the ages. We throw some vegan in there, and we got a full-on brawl. We got like the Anchorman brawl between all the news crews.
I got to think that some of the CrossFitters, like the pandemic CrossFitters that couldn't go to their CrossFit gyms,
Or died from COVID.
or went down to COVID, turned to Peloton. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a pro wrestling UFC blending of the minds and some of their.
We got to do some research on people that convert from one cultish religion to another, and just see if we can find any correlation between Peloton and CrossFit, back and forth people.
I may or may not have family members that have been involved in cults, so I will make some phone calls.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of cults, man. I might start my own, actually, just to see what happens. But anyway, let's go on.
Make a little money.
Yeah, poison Kool-Aid, the whole deal.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. So let's give Glover Teixeira some attention here, because he did pull off something incredible and creating perhaps the best feel-good story we've seen in the sport of mixed martial arts for quite some time. But the question I pose to you, gentlemen, is this the feel-good story of the year for combat sports in general? Because Anderson Silva, a UFC title holder, a legend in his own right, some consider the greatest of all time in our sport of MMA, man, he is creating quite the feel-good story in boxing. So which one of these is topping your sentimental all in the fields list for the year?
Teixeira, by far. Anderson Silva getting some surprising and gratifying success in boxing is the ultimate case of the rich getting richer in terms of legacy. There's nothing he could do in boxing to really hurt his legacy. If he went out and got like busted up by a club fighter or, God forbid, a Paul brother, who cares? His MMA accomplishments are intact. He's still either the greatest of all time or not the greatest of all time based on what you already thought. This changes the entire narrative about Glover Teixeira. It's not even a horse race. Like, this is the feel-good fight story of the year. And Glover Teixeira is an unambiguously good dude, pretty much universally beloved and revered. And the longer your personal history with MMA goes back, the more you love the guy and the happier you were to see it. There's no PED question mark hanging over him. There's no seriously, it would be hard to picture a more universally deserving guy in the eyes of most fans.
Very well said. Jay, what say you?
It's what makes it special. It's what makes Glover's whole run special, is that the old heads can appreciate it and understand exactly what he has done and what he has gone through and the struggles to just get to America. And then, being stuck in Connecticut and that whole, the trials and tribulations he went through while also trying to put a career together, and then achieve things that no one expected that it was what happened. Like, this was a guy who a couple of years ago was already written off. He was done. Oh, he had his shot. He had his chance. Then he met John Jones. Oh, that was too bad. And then, okay, maybe he'll bounce back. And then they got Phil Davis and lost. And so by then it was over. The story was over. It was, well, somebody, if he's not long enough, then it doesn't matter. And that was the end of his story completely. And so when he knocked out Rashad Evans, people were like, whatever. No big deal. It's nothing special. So it's a different kind of feel-good story. And I'm with Duffy in that this is the kind of the story that makes Glover Teixeira now suddenly becoming a guy of, is he in the top 5 best light heavyweights ever? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm saying that is now a question that almost deserves asking because of what he just did. And I think and that is a legacy making performance that for the the sport's good guy. There can't be many more guys that what he's done, what he's been through, what he gives back to the sport, he gives back to the people he trains, he built a camp. I mean, we've talked about on this show, and also Duffy, you've talked on your Shill and Duffy show about fighters that go and start their own camps, but around themselves to make them better. Well, Glover and Teixeira MMA and Fitness in Connecticut didn't really do that to make him better. He made it to be able to make everybody better. And so to see this kind of thing happen is just, we don't get that many moments in this sport where we go, okay, the good guy's doing it. And it isn't to say that Jan Blachowicz is a bad guy, because he's not. He's a great guy too. He has done some great things for the sport. He has very severely lifted the sport in Poland, as a early KSW guy who fought up the ranks to be the big name in the UFC champion he is. But Teixeira's win just felt different. And in a division that it has so much history. I mean, light heavyweight is the flagship division of the UFC. Period. The end. It's the one that everybody always, Chuck and Tito and all of the stories and all of the fights and all of the legacies and the Jones. This is the one that people pay attention to. And so for him to be king of that mountain is just, it's a good moment that made even the toughest guy a little misty-eyed there after when he finally got the win.
Like literally the toughest guy, as in Big Nog, was like crying.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to top that moment. I think when it comes to just a legitimate moment, you got to go with Glover Teixeira. Anderson Silva has certainly been entertaining in his run, and it felt really good to see the juxtaposition of him having that terrible loss against Uriah Hall, and that being his whimpering swan song out of the UFC, to see Dana White on the podium afterwards, spinning, instead of giving him the proper tribute and proper send off, trying to trashing his name for other promotions, and downplaying his opponent. And that was where the energy went after such a legendary career. And then to see Anderson Silva pull off what he did against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and then to knock out one of the biggest morons the sport has ever produced in Tito Ortiz. Certainly fantastic moments, but the in-cage ups and downs that Glover Teixeira has had to culminate with that belt. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we saw Rumble Johnson knock his tooth out of the cage. It was not long ago since Alexander Gustafsson landed perhaps the best uppercut in MMA history to put him out. Like, to see that, and then he bounces back from that to winning a belt against a guy who is proven to be a destroyer of destroyers. I mean, movies can't be written as beautifully as that, and to have it happen to such a universally loved person adds a little icing on the cake. And like you said, not to take away anything from Jan, like Jan is like a dope person. From at least the times I've interviewed him, stuff, he's a dope guy. But man, it felt good to see Glover get that win, especially as a man who's about to be 40 years old in the not too distant future. It's good to see an old guy do something there. So
old guys have been doing a lot lately, though, and I think that is part of the reason there's the feel good of Fedor winning in Moscow, knocking out Tim Johnson, Andrei Arlovsky. We've been talking about this for the past few weeks in the show, and to see the Glover Teixeira carry that on is also a plus. And what personally made this win such a huge win for me is because of how much negative there has been in the sport lately. Always a bad story. It's always someone's doing something wrong. Somebody's hurting somebody. Domestic abuse is there's major UFC fighters who are being embroiled in bad story after bad story after bad story. So to see a good guy who has always been on the straight and narrow and has always been an inspiration to people pulling it off is just a moment of clarity in a sea of just turmoil, I guess.
Absolutely. Definitely good to report on something that makes us smile for a change. So another thing that made me smile on this card, that co-main event, Cory Sandhagen and Petr Yan gave us thrills and thrills all throughout. Petr Yan, in the end, is declared the winner via unanimous decision. He is now the interim bantamweight champion. Wouldn't quite know that from the broadcast, the way things were announced. He was announced as a two-time bantamweight champion, and the UFC went the extra mile as far as showing that emerald placed on his belt to indicate that he had a title defense. So little Aljo shade, but before we get into that, let's talk about the fight itself. Yan and Sandhagen, how did you score it? How did you see it playing out, fellas?
I scored at 49-46 for Yan. I thought Sandhagen won the first round. I thought Yan won all the rest of them, but only the third round where he knocked him down with the spinning back fist and then like the follow-up overhand was really like a lopsided, inarguable round. The rest of them were all competitive. This was an extremely entertaining fight for how one-sided it ended up on the scorecards, I thought. And it was an indication just like Jan's power, like told, like you could tell, like it just it affected Sandhagen in a way that was not two-way traffic. And Jan is just such a fantastic boxer. And he really just took the first round to get the range, get the rhythm, get his bearings, and then he controlled the fight. There was really never a point in the final 4 rounds that I thought Sandhagen was really close to turning it around.
Yeah, this fight was an interesting one because I noted in the Pick'em and in the our who you got pieces that Jan had surprising power, but Sandhagen has volume and it's just the ability to fluster you and a lot of footwork and all that. It mattered until it didn't, and it mattered until Petr Yan figured it out. And I've decided I'm going to call him Petr Yan, just like I'm not going to call Fedor Fyodor, because good Lord, that will require a paradigm shift for me. 48-47 is how I scored the fight. And I almost scored it 48-47 in favor of Sandhagen because of the second round, because Sandhagen did outland him. And there wasn't that major concussive blow like the third round that made me go, okay, there's a change in here. It was more of a Sandhagen starting to get figured out. And that's kind of the thing that I expected. Like when you see Dominic Cruz fight, you're going to expect somebody to eventually figure out his timing, figure out his footwork, and get to that. And Yan did exactly that. And it was very impressive. I disagree with something that Duffy, you and Keith Schillen said on your recap show when I actually poked my nose in and asked if the fight would be different had Sandhagen not taken the fight on a month's notice. I think it would have. And I think it would have because the pace and the cardio of Cory Sandhagen definitely faltered in the last 2 rounds. He wasn't throwing as hard. He wasn't throwing as fast. He wasn't throwing as often. And he wasn't accurate at all. And I think there were times, I think I even wrote it in the Short Dog play-by-play of the fight, in the 4th round, I believe it said Sandhagen is starting to slow. I'm not saying he could pull it off. I'm saying that the 5th round, I scored it for Sandhagen, more elusive. He finally got his out of the way of the bigger shots, and Yan decided to stop headhunting. I think if they run it back, hold on, in like 2 years or so, after they both fought several times, I think it might be a different fight that Sandhagen could overtake him with volume. And I do think that a full camp would be a slightly different result. It wouldn't be no less dramatic, and Yan may slug him very hard and take him out of that. But I don't think the damage in the 3rd round was the reason he slowed as much as the fact that, he went all out. I mean, he threw 100, I think he threw like 115 punches in the 2nd round alone. That's more punches than some guys threw out in a 15-minute fight earlier today or that day.
You know what? I want to agree and disagree with both of you on this one, because I think really what slowed Sandhagen down was the body shots that Yan was landing. He was placing those body kicks over and over and over and over again. And even when he didn't land them cleanly, they get blocked on the arms. That's going to take a little bit out of you. I don't think Sandhagen suffered necessarily from the late notice. He's a guy who stays in shape. He pretty much knows what he's going to do regardless of what his opponent has to bring to the table. So I don't think that's going to be as much of a factor, but I do think maybe the X factor as far as the late notice would be the level of motivation that you're going to have in training. Because it is one thing to train thinking, okay, I might be slotted in for this spot, so let me stay in shape, let me stay active. And it's another thing to know for sure on this date you're going to meet this person, and these are the problems that are going to be presented to you.
And stare at his picture on the wall. And
Exactly. And
the end of training
crumple
camp.
it up when, while he's lifting up the rocks and the KGB is following him, running through the snow. Like that's something that can only happen if you know for sure that you're meeting this person on this date. So maybe that becomes a factor, but I don't want to take away anything from what Yan accomplished, because it was such a methodical, such a strategic approach to it. He has a very boxing centric approach, and not in the fact that he's a good boxer necessarily, although that's a big factor in it too. It's that he's okay with dropping a round or two. He's okay. It's like a sort of like a Mayweather approach to it. I'm okay with losing a round or two if during that round or two I'm watching and I'm studying you and I'm picking up and I'm computing all this data in order to use it against you as it moves into the later rounds. I scored the first 2 rounds for Sandhagen and then thought it was a landslide for Yan after that point, with the 5th round being kind of iffy, but Yan had the more effective offense in my opinion, so that swayed it for him. Great fight. Fantastic fight. Now, I think the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what about Mr. Sterling, who holds, according to the actual records, the undisputed championship?
I give the UFC 3 months before they strip him.
Yep.
If he doesn't sign on the dotted line, and I'm not saying that if he doesn't fight by February, I'm saying if there's not a formal agreement for UFC 275 in April, I have the thing somewhere, that I think they're going to probably strip him.
You give him that long? Because I think it'd be the first
end of the year.
You know what? I think if Yan came out today and said, "Hey, I'm ready to fight in January. Like, put me on that Anaheim show on the 22nd. I'm ready for that." And if there is the slightest setback as far as Aljo's medical recovery, he's getting stripped right away. Mm-hmm. If Aljo has a shred of doubt and he says, "Can you make January 22nd?" and he's like, if he says and he doesn't say yes, he's getting stripped.
Who would you fight though?
Who would Yan? Who would Yan fight?
Because TJ is out for a couple more months. Sandhagen or not Sandhagen, Font and Aldo are fighting in December. Marab.
They
yank one of those guys.
They take Font or Aldo. Yeah, they'll take Font out of that.
I don't think they do Aldo again.
No, they wouldn't do that again. But I do think even if Dillashaw is saying he's out now, they'll hold it up for Dillashaw. They will strip Aljo and then say, okay, when are you ready to go, Dillashaw? Okay, you ready to go in March? All right, we'll do it for March.
God. I mean,
just
I can see that.
Yeah, like the way they really disrespected Aljo by Joe Martinez's announcement of 2-time bantamweight champion, how the social media post showing the emerald that's supposed to signify a title defense, yet this was a new belt that was introduced into the division.
An interim belt.
Yes, an interim belt. They are very, very keen on kind of sweeping Aljo under the rug, in my opinion.
Duffy, am I out of my mind for thinking that Sterling could beat Yan when he comes back? Like,
I think he could beat Yan. It'll depend on how he looks when he comes back. An interview went up on Sherdog today with Adrian Yanez, who Aljo brought into his camp a month or two ago to simulate Yan, which hey, that's quite the compliment, go Houston. But 2, he said, even at the time, I could tell that his neck wasn't healed properly. Like there'd be certain situations, certain positions where he'd have to pull back, and it was nerves almost, not I was nervous, but literally the nerves in my neck. I think Sterling could beat him if he comes back, and he's back to himself. He certainly has avenues to victory. He presents unique challenges. But the thing is, I thought Yan was winning the fight before the disqualification. I'd favor him in a rematch, which just makes it even weirder that the UFC is so bent on just finding a way to promote Yan to undisputed champ as quickly as possible without regard for whether he fights Sterling. Because Yan could make a clean end to this story just by fighting him sometime in the first half of next year. Like I as much as I like Sterling, I think Yan beats him in a rematch. They could just do it, but the UFC is just nervous and got their hand like ready to hit that red button.
And to what end? I don't know. And why would what would they gain by skipping over the current number C fighter the bantamweight division?
I mean, I don't understand it. It's maybe some behind the scenes stuff that we're not privy to. You know, I can't call it. I will say this though, that they have a precedent for pushing interim champions to defenses. Like Henan Barao, you know, defended the interim title a couple of times before ultimately getting promoted. If it's just a function of getting a belt on the poster and fulfilling some sort of contractual obligation to make it a pay-per-view or whatever the case may be, you can just have him defend the interim belt while Aljo heals up. So I'm thinking this is more of a personal thing because they have gone out of their way to sort of pretend like Aljo doesn't exist. And if that's because the controversial nature in which he got the belt, I don't know if it's some sort of negotiation. I mean, remember, Aljo was one of the first fighters in this era to push for free agency, as he came very close to signing to Bellator when I think he was still undefeated at the time, or if it was right after he lost to Caraway. I'm not quite, or I had the draw with Caraway. I'm not quite sure exactly the timeline, but somewhere around there. So I don't know if this is a holdover of a grudge. I don't know if this is just a function of them trying to keep the schedule going, but you can keep the schedule going without disrespecting the guy who actually holds the title.
Agreed. And they've made it personal. Like the Dana soundbite that they keep playing. Like I just said like 3 minutes ago, I think Yan was on his way to winning that fight even before the disqualification. Dana says, I think Sterling was breaking. Like there's just an effort to like actually sewer the guy in a subjective sense, like not even just talking objectively about the fight.
And I don't understand it from a promotional perspective for the promoter to slime the champion, whether they agree with how the result happened. The result happened. It's following the unified rules. In the event of an intentional foul, this happens. If the fighter wins by disqualification, they win the fight. Therefore, the title changes hands. There's nothing controversial about it other than the fact that Yan threw the knee. So to see the UFC going out of its way, as you guys are beautifully pointing out, to disparage Aljo Sterling when they could use this as almost a teachable moment to be like, okay, fine, man. If you think you got it when you're healed up, let's go. Like this was a situation. I don't know why I'm still irritated by this. This was a situation where Aljo Sterling was not cleared by the UFC's medical physicians. So how can Dana essentially go, he doesn't want the fight, when his own team of doctors said, you're not fighting, man. Your neck is hanging on by like duct tape and like 3 sheetrock screws. Like there's nothing keeping you going on here. You're swaying around like nothing. And it's a narrative that I can't understand, and it isn't sustainable. This is your champion. What happens if he comes back and wreck shop on Petr Yan? Picks him up, slams him through the mat, just beats him up, elbows him, and chokes him out. First round, handling him like he did to Cory Sandhagen. Well, then Aljo Sterling is an uncontroversial champion, having submitted a guy who I don't believe had ever been finished before in that scenario. What do? You have just spent a year and a half trashing this guy who is very, very likely and has all the skills to be a great fighter for many more years. So I can't understand from any perspective. Does Yan sell better than Aljo Sterling? I don't know how we could tell that because he hasn't headlined.
I don't think you really could tell which one would be the box office draw because neither one of them has had enough opportunities to do it. And then you think like, wouldn't it be better from a promotional standpoint to frame the rematch like, well, Aljo outstruck him in the early portions of the fight. How about that? Like, how about, oh, he was getting the better of him until Yan turned it on later, like something. And even if it's not necessarily the truest narrative, I mean, you want people to pay to watch it?
There are storylines to make here, and the UFC is just lighting them on fire. Like if they take the title from Sterling, if they pull it from him, don't be surprised if he says I'm out. I would not at all be surprised.
Yeah.
I've been speaking to this guy since he was a member of the Sherdog forums, discussing getting ready to sign with UFC. So this is a guy who hard on his sleeve. I know what I want, and I want to be treated right. If they take the title from him after this little amount of time because of issues that the UFC itself has placed on him, it will be a disservice to everything that they've been trying to do here. Why make the fight in the first place if you already hated the guy? There's just so many questions that aren't going to be answered. If you're a promoter, promote.
Really, it's in the name. I just can't make any sense of this. And the thing is, we keep having more and more stories like this where it just confuses the hell out of me of what we're trying to do. What are we watching? But let's keep things pushing here, because we definitely have given these few topics that we start off with a lot of love, and we got a lot more to get through before we wrap things up. Islam Makhachev put in work against Dan Hooker, submitted him with absolute ease in the first round, bragged that he didn't need a shower afterward, that it was that easy. But I'm sure the podium was a little stinky. But anyway, how close is that man to stepping into a title fight? 2 fights.
And that only because, there's a little bit of a line ahead of him. There are a few kind of obvious fights with title implications that need to sort themselves out. Gaethje versus Chandler. Like, he's going to need at least one more, and maybe some fortuitous scheduling and an injury withdrawal. But I think it's more likely he gets 2 fights.
I
mean, I want him to have to fight twice more before then. For one thing, he's not, like, barring the fact that he, did get like one-shotted in his one UFC loss, he's not the kind of guy who's going to lose a dumb fight between now and then. So might as well give him the seasoning, give him the chance to just continue to sharpen his tools, give the UFC a chance to introduce this guy to people, because he had the Khabib problem for a while that he didn't fight super often, so it was hard to keep him in the public eye. This is the guy that's claimed for years that nobody wanted to fight him. I believe him. I don't believe it every time a fighter says that. I believe it in this case. And now he's at the point where people have to fight him because he is getting into the direct line of title contention. Might as well take advantage of it.
I mean, he's won 9 fights in a row?
Something like that, yeah.
Tony Ferguson's laughing, saying, dude, you got to get like 3-4 more before we can talk about it. It's not going to happen like that. And that's really too bad that we're going to see double standards emerging again, or triple standards. I forget how many standards we've built up in this division. But the Khabib connection and the Khabib parallels and the Khabibings is just the kind of thing the UFC is going to, like, I can almost see a fight poster with Makhachev and Khabib's on his shoulder so they can stick that guy's mug on some logo so they can promote him using Khabib, just to kind of get a little bit of that luster, that star power.
As long as it's not fucking Hasbulla's face on there, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay, no, let's talk. What the hell? What is the deal?
I don't get it.
We have devolved into what is this? I get it. He's little. He's a little guy. He's a dwarf. He has a condition that I forget the name of the specific condition that makes it so he stops aging at a certain point. I get it. What are we doing? Why are we bringing him into the cage? Why are we giving him cage side seats? Why are we picking him up like Simba? Why are we putting him on our shoulder like we take him to a baseball game? What is happening? This is a 19-year-old man. And I say 19 because I actually don't know how old he was. Because for the past 2 or 3 years, he's been billed as an 18-year-old. So that means you can't be 18 the whole time. This guy could be 40. I have no idea. I know nothing about this guy. It's not my lane, but they're making a thing out of it. The UFC and ESPN will post it on there. So this is a self-created. This is like the UFC equivalent of the Disney Channel making musicians out of nothing. This is it. This hurts my core because I feel like we have devolved all the way down to a circus sideshow act. Because there's talk about the face-offs and he's going to fight the other little guy with the toupee and the suit. I don't know what the heck that is all about, but I saw that on. I am rabid about this because I cannot get it.
Well, Jay, the thing is, we've seen this sort of thing happen before. I think it's just the unfortunate part is that it made a major UFC event. That's the part that I find unfortunate. But this sport has accepted a lot of buffoonery into the lexicon and into like just the gates have opened up to like think about that goofball, the bagel boss or whatever. He's like some short little jackass who's having rage about not having enough cream cheese or whatever the hell it is, screaming at people, and somehow or another he gets accepted into the sport. Or a drunkard who's painting just bleed across his face becomes sort of like a standard mascot for mixed martial arts. This is something that we've done for a very long time. So these two guys are just the next in line, and there'll be somebody else. They'll be there. It's just unfortunate that it's getting higher and higher profile, but yeah, it sucks. And it confuses the hell out of me.
There are betting lines that are legitimate. You can find them right this second on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, whenever you're watching this broadcast on bestfightodds.com, the major odds database. There are odds on those two dudes fighting each other.
Yeah,
what is directly above and directly below those matchups? Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou 2 and Paulo Costa versus Robert Whittaker. But sandwiched between those two fights is Hasbulla, Magomedov, and Abdu Rosic, whatever. I don't know. My feelings on these little gentlemen have nothing to do with their stature. You could be whatever you want to be, but
my feelings about them have something to do with their stature.
Please hit me.
Like, I there's no indication that Hasbulla is mentally handicapped or developmentally disabled in any way. So if he's having fun, I'm not going to be so paternalistic as to be offended on his behalf. Right. But I'm embarrassed for us. I'm embarrassed for us as a sport that like is bringing out a human being as like a pet or a mascot. That's it. Like if he's having fun, great. But this shit is super embarrassing. And if he and mini Paul Bearer want to have a fight, then I guess Vyacheslav Kiselev can ref it.
Just bleed, baby. Just bleed.
God.
That's the word you said is exactly the word I felt that night. That he was a pet. He wasn't a person in the cage. He was a figure. You would slap logos on him and drag him along to something. He was a promotional tool, but I don't know.
He's like in Paris Hilton's purse getting, carried around town.
Yes. And I'd rather have that baby on my shoulder. People were talking, and this was a legitimate question that people had when Petr Yan won the fight and his kid got in there. People were asking, is this another one of those Hasbulla guys? Or, that's his child. This can't be something that we're going to run into again. It can't. It is, what are we doing if this is I don't know.
Jay, I hate to break it to you. We are going to run into this again. It's going to happen again, and it's going to piss us off, and we're going to be irritated all over again. It's a circus. It's a circus. There was a time where way back when I was on Sherdog Radio and talking to Jeff Sherwood, and he says, this is not a sport. And I pushed back, but damn it, Jeff was right. This is not a sport. This is a carnival. And we are willing participants in the foolishness.
Don't ever get me wrong. If those two fought at Fight Circus, I would be I would be a season ticket holder. I would watch. I would enjoy it. I wouldn't laugh gleefully or anything like that. But that would be the kind of thing I expect to see at Fight Circus because they know what they're doing. But this is a promotion geared for the absurdity in Full Metal Dojo, and we love you, FMD. Keep doing what you're doing. Fight Circus 3 is literally called "Hold My Beer." You got it. You know it. We know it. You're good to go. But this is the UFC.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Islam Makhachev. He is probably, at best, a win away from a title shot. The UFC wants to put a Khabib in the top title picture as fast as they possibly can. Daniel Cormier saying that Makhachev may deserve the next title shot over Justin Gaethje didn't make Justin Gaethje very happy. But Justin Gaethje's won how many fights since he fought Khabib Nurmagomedov? So at that same time, I'm okay with that. But I know the UFC likes to recycle challengers very often. Like, think how many title shots champions and X whatevers have gotten. So yeah, as soon as they possibly can squeeze him in, we'll probably see him fighting for a title within 6 months. And am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. But I think I'm interested to see what Conor McGregor's recovery from his injury looks like, because that sounds like a great way to get Makhachev over. Or if you want to, if Dana is still hell-bent on luring Khabib back to the cage, nothing would do it better than having Conor McGregor spark Islam Makhachev. So the winner of a fight between those two can work a lot of financial wonders for the company, regardless of how it plays out. So that's what I think. And by the way, Makhachev slaughters McGregor. So let's put that out there.
First round submission.
Oh, easy. Yeah, easily. Like what he was able to do to someone as skilled as Dan Hooker, a guy who you can't really take down very consistently. You can't hold down very consistently.
You can't keep him there. Exactly.
Yeah. That was very impressive. But we've got another gentleman who has been highly hyped up, and he similarly showed a one-sided beatdown. And this was Khamzat Chimaev making his return from a long haul COVID symptoms to go ahead and beat the brakes off of Li Jingliang. How high is this man's ceiling now?
I've been kind of tapping the brakes or just being very conservative about it. And I'm starting to swing back the other way and over adjust, because he's starting to get that same feeling of Conor McGregor or John Jones on the way up, where each next logical test for him, he's just been blowing through in a way so as to make it seem ridiculous to do anything other than kind of fast track him into the title picture. Everything that was supposed to be kind of a logical next test for Jones, he just made it look silly. And same with McGregor. That's what it feels like with Chimaev. Like, I wouldn't favor him against Kamaru Usman in his next fight, even though some nut jobs on Twitter were going on about that. Wouldn't favor him against Covington. But I said on the Sherdog recap that I think he should fight someone like Gilbert Burns next, and I think I would favor him. Like, I think he might be one of the 4 or 5 best welterweights in the world right now.
Kamaru Usman is currently a 2-1 favorite over Chimaev in the betting lines.
I think that's fair, but if Chimaev
slots
goes
ahead
out
of Hasbulla.
Yeah,
if Chimaev goes out, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, the tools are just unbelievable. Of all the guys that kind of come from that Chechen Dagestani wrestling mold, he's the one that comes closest to actually doing it as well as Khabib Nurmagomedov, probably even more so than Islam Makhachev. And on top of that, he has this just shocking, blinding hand speed and power that, frankly, Khabib never did. Khabib was a surprisingly good striker, but Chimaev, appears to be elite.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was doubting Chimaev, as I was doubting Makhachev too. I definitely had some reservations about their ascension or what their ceilings held. But I mean, sky's the limit for both of these.
I just muted you.
Oh, baby muted me. Okay. Chimaev certainly has.
Baby doesn't like Chimaev.
No, she doesn't. Although if I shave my mustache, I'd probably look just like him. So
Chimaev is just to warn you guys. Chimaev is about to get in the top 10 of the welterweight division.
oh, absolutely.
And I said, Li Jingliang is 11,
yeah,
and he punked
I
him.
mean, Dana said post fight that he was going to be in the top 10 when the new rankings came out.
Why would he have any say over those? That's wait.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that's happening. But I got another question for you guys before we keep things pushing here. Who is Nate Diaz most likely to fight in what appears to be the last fight on his UFC contract? Makhachev or Chimaev?
C. Connor. Final answer.
I kind of think the UFC is going to finally cash that one before it expires. You know, the Nate versus Connor 3 was a fight that seemed to have almost an unlimited shelf life because it didn't matter if either of them lost a bunch of fights, but it's getting to the point where they really do need to cash it in, and I actually think Jay's right on this one. And it's probably the most competitive of the three.
That's right. That's it. That's exactly what it is.
And it's going to be at welterweight because Connor looks like Ilir Latifi right now.
He is
like he is 4 feet wide and it's muscle, but you're like, dude, you're not making 155.
It's because he ate Machine Gun Kelly. So
oh, he just wanted to be invincible. Man, Diaz Chimaev doesn't do anything for the UFC because they can't sell it as a pay-per-view. So it's co-main event of a pay-per-view, and it kind of helps it for Chimaev. It's like third fight on the card for Makhachev, and that doesn't do anything. Or Diaz Connor 3 sells out, I don't know, the Footprint Center in Phoenix, Arizona or something, and blows the doors off there. I don't know. Or they're not going many places other than Arizona and Florida, most likely for a little while. So yeah, otherwise you're right, little baby. Yawn. It's not that exciting, but it'll make him money.
We actually already talked about Petr Yan, so let's move things along here. So for our swing or miss, we prepped for me to pronounce this man's name correctly, and I forgot. So
he doesn't deserve your proper.
He doesn't deserve to have his name properly pronounced because he is a trash referee. He was overseeing the Elizeu dos Santos and Saint Denis fight. Was that the worst example of reffing I've ever seen in the UFC, gentlemen?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, unless I'm forgetting some Dark Ages shit from like a single digit UFC, it is. Just he filled out the whole bingo card, letting an unconscionable amount of damage happen, ignoring a fighter saying he couldn't see out of one eye, exacting a point for a foul too early, which is almost impossible to do in my opinion. But, you know, just with no warning, no preamble, taking a point away for a cup shot, like, and the fact that you could tell the man was not a professional when, you know, the camera focused on him ahead of the fight, and he all but did like the run the jewels thing. Like he did like a complex set of gang signs from, you know, from former Soviet republics. Like this idiot motherfucker, like just the biggest shit show of refereeing I have seen in the UFC in at least 15 years.
Like you have to go back to the worst beatings that weren't stopped. Like Gavin Tucker, Ricky Glenn, Mike Davis, long hair Thomas Gifford.
Gifford, yep.
Where Andrew Glenn was the referee in that one. I do remember that one. Where you go, oh my God, ref, you're gonna let this guy die. Thankfully, Thomas Gifford got knocked completely unconscious, so Andrew Glenn, you know, couldn't pick his hand up and get it to know he was there. But this takes the cake because it wasn't just the stoppage or the lack of stoppage or lack of the fact that maybe the fight could have been stopped 3 or 4 more times during that hellacious beating that Elizeu dos Santos punched himself out, knocking the guy in and out of consciousness and just smashing him to pieces. Kiselev, you know, we know him from, some of us know him. He's a prominent fixture on RCC, Russia Cage, over there. And some people might know him from Strelka Street Fights, where he has the predilection to freak out during fights going, ah, and then oh, maybe I should do something here. Every bit about it was a problem. Every bit. It wasn't the poor the non-intervention. It wasn't the doctor stoppage that should have happened. The intervention of, hey, I can't see. That is a fight-ending set of words. That's it. John McCarthy has said that forever. Before he was a Bellator guy, before he decided to cash in his referee stripes. I can't see is the end of the fight. That's the worst thing you can do. You want to get your eye to clear or anything like that. So the fight was over. And the fighter bowed out of the fight, essentially. And he said, no. If he dies, he dies. And then the point deduction that I didn't get a couple, what was it, 2 shows ago? We were like, yes, all the stoppages. Yeah, we lost. Oh, there you go. We wanted all the point deductions. We want all the, yes, take a point. Eye poke, it matters, everything like that. But then you look at this and go, I don't know about that one. I think that point deduction wasn't necessarily merited. Now, UFC acts as its own commission in the UAE, despite the fact that they have UAE branded referee apparel. So that's an interesting, I don't know how exactly that worked. And therefore, Mark Goddard and Mark Ratner were like, get out of here, get out of Dodge. So you almost feel better, but you feel worse about that. Like me, I personally felt worse that, oh yeah, that's right. The UFC can do that at any time. If they disagree with something, they can intervene because they act as their own commission. And we know that promotions that act as their own commission are always acting in the best interest of their fighters and doing the right thing. We certainly know that every organization based in Singapore will always not overturn the fight results that they should and make sure that they act honorably. And this situation, just go back to Strelka.
Yeah, what a joke of refereeing. Now, one more question before we keep things pushing on this topic. What was worse, the reffing or the response of St. Denis cornerman about
That was going to be I'm not surprised. Like, honestly, the corner response is worse because the ref was just incompetent. The corner is callous and negligent. Like, just for those who don't know what we're talking about, St. Denis head corner second came out, I think today, Monday, and said we would never have thrown in the towel. It's like, dude, then you should not be cornering fighters, period. Like, full stop. If you would not have thrown in the towel ever, like, let alone if the fact that you didn't throw in the towel in that fight, you should not be cornering people.
Yeah. And then the framing around the concept that the outrage was because people are too sensitive. I think the man's family might be sensitive to him being brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought. Just he might be sensitive to not having cognitive function in his later years, as a result of the lack of cornering that was done on Saturday. So just a joke of a situation all the way around. St. Denis needs another team. And that ref needs to be nowhere near a cage fight.
I don't know if I recorded this in Fight Facts. I don't think I did, but Easy Dos Santos landed over 100 strikes, about, I think it was like 90, 95 significant strikes in that fight, which is like in the top 5 of strikes landed in a round. So this was just, most of the other ones were Max Holloway. What Max Holloway did to Calvin Kattar, what Max Holloway did to Brian Ortega, what Max Holloway did to Jose Aldo. And we all know how all 3 of those fights we felt about those. Why corner? Remember we were talking about Jim West and Aspen Ladd a couple weeks ago, that if you're not going to help the situation and you don't have anything good to say, you can get your doctorate in what, Ant?
Shutting the F up.
Just don't say anything. Like, he said the one thing that could make the situation worse, that he could make the fighter look worse. This is a guy who the UFC might Max Roscoff him. They might not bring him back. And remember, Max Roscoff was an undefeated fighter who came to the UFC, he ended up quitting on the stool to suffer his first loss, in the UFC said, "You're out of here. See you later, kid." And the reaction in the whole situation, this might be the end for Benoit St, which is just another instance of his team not doing him justice.
Right, because if they threw in the towel, there's no question of that.
And everybody goes, and people would go, thank you. This is a fight that Mike Fridley was probably like, maybe they could get around to stopping this thing anytime soon.
Yeah, if he thinks the fight needs to be stopped, then it's a slaughter. That man is cruel.
I can't speak to whether he said that or not. I'm just saying that's the kind of.
I should text him later and ask him, like, did you think that should have been stopped? And no. But anyway, all right, fellas,
I didn't see any brass knuckles. Like, no.
Yeah, he's like,
I didn't hear no bell.
All right, and of course, my daughter is biting my finger, so I'm going to have a little trouble pressing the bell. Actually, no, I got a free finger right here to press the bell for Shallow Cut. So we're going to have 30 seconds to answer these questions. We're running low on time, and we got a few things to get through, so let's keep things pushing here. I want to ask you the first question. Yeah.
Okay, please. All right, and so we have some news. It's not related to the UFC, but it's a former UFC fighter doing a thing. Your favorite fighter, former UFC fighter Mike Perry, is in BKFC. Are you surprised, Mr. Falcon? And what do you think about that signing?
You know what? Thing is, Mike Perry has always been a BKFC fighter. He just didn't know it. He's been a BKFC fighter on loan to the UFC ever since his entrance into the organization. So this is just a homecoming. This is him walking into his house, walking into his parents' house that he grew up in, and he's going in the refrigerator. He's got his shirt off. He's not wearing any shoes, and he's just chilling out, and he's eating up all the chips and making a mess. And this is home. So I mean, this couldn't have been a more perfect marriage.
I hope he fights in Tampa.
God, I'm so glad you asked me that question.
Me too.
You know what, Jay? Go ahead and sound the rest of the questions. You did a fantastic job, sir.
All right. Okay, Ben, I know we could talk about contenders, but there was another fight card that happened last week, and there were a lot of titles on the line, and the biggest one, I guess, was the main event, Kayla Harrison. Surprise, surprise, the 4,000 favorite won in Kayla Harrison, submitting Taylor Guardado, won another $1 million, but she's a free agent now. And PFL hasn't come out and said, we're keeping her, right? We're absolutely keeping her. We're signing her. We're bringing her on, everything. So where does she land next?
I think it's almost, I would give almost even odds between PFL, Bellator, and UFC right now, honestly. I'm leaning Bellator. I don't think PFL is going to be able to keep her because she wants more than money now. She wants competition. They're not going to be able to build a division around her. Bellator would give her money and immediate, interesting challenges.
10 seconds to spare.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling.
All right, we'll just stop the clock there. Good work there, Ben.
I thought Julia Budd might have been the one to keep her. But
So did I.
then there's 3 other fights on the way. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. I guess I'll...
If Clarissa Shields won. Then we might be talking.
Oh, man. Could you imagine 2-0 Clarissa Shields barely getting by Abby Montes? Oh.
Could there be an easier paycheck thing for Kayla Harrison than fighting Clarissa Shields right now?
A higher profile, easy paycheck.
That's promotional. That's promotional malfeasance at that point. That's the kind of fight that Iowa or whomever would say, they'd have on the sheet about not sanctioned due to lack of competitive nature. I guess I'll assign myself. Good question, me. We did have some other relevant fights with fists and faces, apparently. And one such main card fight was Magomed Ankalev, who cruised to a decision over Volkan Ozdemir, beating him up, but not quite finishing the job. So my question to me is, hey, me, did Ankalaev prove himself to be a top contender at light heavyweight? And in this situation, he did and he didn't. And that is a kind of a symptom of Dana White's Contender Series, because the mentality is now you got to get a finish. People were deriding Magomed Ankalev for not finishing Volkan Ozdemir. They're like, well, other guys have knocked him out, so why couldn't you? They're saying, oh, he doesn't have the power when he needs it, doesn't have the killer instinct. So that public backlash will hurt him in a way that shouldn't at all. And he did, and he didn't.
All right. Very nice there. So now let's move on, and we are pretty you know what, pretty quickly here, we got to get through our house taste my crow. So break out your seasoning salt, your cracked pepper, paprika, and butter for the pan. Ben, house taste my crow this week.
I got the Sandhagen versus Yan fight wrong, but I did pretty well in the card in general. But I thought Sandhagen would present a lot more problems for Yan. He really didn't. I scored 4 rounds for Yan. I'll take that crow.
All right, Jay, house taste my crow this week.
Bust me out some Scandinavian spices. Probably, I think, some cardamom, probably some saffron. It's a little expensive, but he can afford it because he's got a $50,000 check. I did not see Li Jingliang getting punked. And by punked, of course, I mean no strikes landed, no takedowns attempted, no submissions, nothing. He got completely shut out and embarrassed. He got big brother. He got picked up. There are incredible memes on the Sherdog Forum, or shoots on the Sherdog Forum, of the suplex or the attempted suplex of Chimaev and Li Jingliang. So yeah, I had Li Jingliang getting the job done in the 3rd round, and he didn't get the job done in the locker room.
All right, good ones there. My house tastes my crow. I'm not surprised of the winner, but just how it all happened. LaRon Murphy, I picked him to beat our Americani, but just have that the way he struggled in that first round, I didn't see it playing out like that. I thought LaRon was just really going to beat him from pillar to post. He managed to pull out that victory, but man, that was such a perfectly timed knee that just came so unexpectedly, and almost a function of just it's sort of happening whether instead of it being part of the game plan. So I had LaRon Murphy winning, just not like that. So yeah, I thought it was going to be a pretty clear-cut decision, but I'll take it. My crow doesn't taste that bad this week. All right, fellas. So now, of course, we can't have a show without the best titled segment in all of media history. I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. It's where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. Jay, I'll begin with you. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So I asked Ben about the PFL show for his shallow cut question, and that was about the only coverage that we would give to PFL, not out of disrespect or anything like that, but just because the card punished you for watching it. This was an event that had 10 fights on it and took 7.5 hours to watch. This wasn't fair. And I say that as someone who's been covering the sport professionally for years now. It doesn't matter how many, but years now. And I can't think of a show that has been quite this brutal to cover and watch. Now I covered it for Sherdog. I was on Twitter. I was kind of ripping on it. I was handling other results and everything like that. And every time something interesting was going to happen, the momentum, or something interesting did happen, the momentum was shattered by a 15-minute promo and commercials and talking. The betting guys got to get their take on it, and then there's got to be some weird awkward interactions between Randy and Sean O'Connell and Kenny Florian. I like those guys. I think they actually have a good booth, but it was the constant, okay, we're going to Kenny to talk about it. Hey, let's talk about this. Okay, let's go to the betting guys and do this. It was a non-stop, non-fight card. Like this, I wanted to have the stat of the week to break down the amount of fight time versus the amount of air time to see how much wasted time there was. And it would probably be in the area of like 5 hours, or I think it was about 5 hours and 10-15 minutes of not fights. And that's, you can't have a product if you're punishing and penalizing your people to watch it Wednesday night. You can't go until midnight. So what I'm not surprised about is that PFL, like I talked about last week, nobody's probably watching it. Well, if they didn't watch it, good, because you missed some good fights, but you missed a ton of wasted time. And when your biggest takeaway from the event is this was a huge waste of time, you have failed as an organization.
Oh, well said. Ben, what's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I mean, we already preempted it by talking about Benoit St Denis' corner. So I'll just add a little chip to Jay's like buffalo poop fire. and say that with all the time they wasted and all the interstitial shit they found to just jam time, the fact that they did not interview Abigail Montes after the biggest win of her career was positively insulting. Like, how, like, they just told her, these are all the things that you are less important than, and then ran a bunch of pre-produced clips and just improvised bullshit between the booth. It was ridiculous.
I'm really happy you brought that up, because if Clarissa Shields had won, come back, because she dropped the round, dropped the whatever, done okay, and then came back to win it.
Oh, she's getting on that mic.
There would have been balloons coming from the ceiling. Like, this is the kind of thing that they would have been shouting from the rooftops about. Oh my God, Clarissa Shields has toughness and she has the resilience. She can make it. But they ignored Abigail Montes. So thank you, Duffy, for saying that.
Yeah. I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment kind of continues from last week. I mentioned the Dana Fedor still sort of not liking each other and that playing out in the media. I know, baby. I know. Fedor deserves more respect.
I know he deserves love.
Yeah. Well, Dana took to the podium after the fight when asked, I think was it Oscar? I think that asked him. It might have been Oscar. I don't know. I have to ask. I can't even remember whose voice it was, but asked him about Fedor's. No, it wasn't even Oscar. It was like a Russian outlet that asked, what did he think of Fedor's win against Timothy Johnson? To which Dana replied, and keep in mind, this is like 20 minutes after a 42-year-old just won the belt, saying, like, criticizing Fedor for still fighting at 45, and also mentioning how if he signed to the organization before, then he wouldn't have to fight. Like, Andrei Arlovsky is still fighting. Andrei Arlovsky fought like last week, and he had the belt. So I don't get it. Like, you know, the picking and choosing of facts to share with the public. Thanks, Dana. You're consistent. So, I know, baby. All right. We're getting to it now. I'm sorry. She's very anxious for us to talk about the fights coming up. We've got Bellator going back to Ireland. Peter Queally and Patricky Pitbull fighting for the vacant lightweight title. Any thoughts on that, and what are we looking forward to on that card?
I think what needs to be pointed out, and maybe this is just on my end, it's on Friday. I think that it'll start early because it's in Ireland. I'm assuming like a 3 p.m. East Coast start time prelims, give or take. That's my guess. I haven't seen the sheet yet. Is that there are 14 fights on it, or at least as of Monday. Something may have fallen out. There may have been some switcheroos, but there are 14 fights on it, and that's a lot. And then I look at the page and I go, wow, there are a lot of fighters without photographs on that, and that's on Short Dog Fight Finder, and that's not a product of negligence on Short Dog Fight Finder's behalf. There are a whole lot of fighters that, what are you doing? Who are you? I haven't seen you before, that are kind of getting their shot, because Bellator is known for putting the best of the best on their preliminary card. It's a lot of fights. It doesn't mean a lot to me. I guess that Patrick Mix is going to completely wash James Gallagher in front of a home crowd is probably what's going to stick out to me. And I don't know, Duffy, you got any oomph out of this card?
No, the Mix versus Gallagher fight was the only one with real interest to me. I am impressed that Bellator is putting together two of their more promising up-and-comers there, and one's going to take his second loss in Bellator. That's about it.
I can't say there's anything on this that I'm particularly like waiting to see. Yeah, kind of mid tier. Early start time is better, I guess, but whatever.
I mean, I guess is that maybe the Patricky Pitbull, the elder brother, is getting a title shot off of a 2-loss streak. Maybe that's something that's interesting, that he hasn't won since December 2019, and is getting a title shot.
Which I'm sure was more of a negotiation ploy for his brother to set that one up. So,
yes.
Whatever, man. I mean, really, the real game in town is UFC 268, taking place at Madison Square Garden. And let's conclude the show with classic Who You Got. We've got 3 bangers that are topping this card. Let's start off with the lightweight contender bout between former interim champion Justin Gaethje and former Bellator king Michael Chandler. Ben, who you got?
I mean, this might change over the course of the week, but right now I'm leaning Chandler. I'm leaning Chandler to get the better of the firefight that Gaethje still finds himself getting into in the first round of most of his fights.
Jay?
Oh, I'm because of the fact that there's a firefight and that in the last firefight it was Charles Oliveira who came out with the knockout. I'm edging towards Gaethje having more firepower, and I think that I'm wondering. I mean, because Chandler, let's not get it twisted. Chandler had Oliveira in the danger zone in the first round. He had him on the ropes, and he couldn't quite finish the job. And partly because Oliveira is so darn good to be able to survive and come back and then knock him out. I don't think that Gaethje is going to struggle because I think the leg kicks are going to really, really get in Michael Chandler's head very quickly. And we know Michael Chandler has a loss in his career when Brent Primus kicked him just in the right in the pineal nerve and shut it in his leg, but loosey-goosey like Jamie Varner back in the day, and just totally disabled him. And I can see leg kick, TKO leg kick and punches, probably second round for Gaethje. And don't be surprised if Chandler cracks him, but I just see that firefight. You don't want to get in a firefight with Justin Gaethje unless you're Dustin Poirier. And even then, Poirier can walk for a month after that fight.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Jay. I think this is Gaethje's fight to lose. This is it's a shame that we're getting this fight when we're getting it, as great of a fight as it still is, because in the reign of Gaethje as WSOF champ and Chandler's run as Bellator champ, this would have been such a more competitive fight, in my opinion. But we're seeing what could be a diminished version of Chandler. Like, this is a guy who suffered some knockout losses. Gaethje, of course, has suffered his share of knockout losses when he first got to the UFC, but this new patient version of him is just a different animal. And even if Chandler lands, one of those potential kill shots, I mean, Gaethje recovers so quickly. I don't see it being something to stifle him. I think Gaethje's power, his pressure, his leg kicks, his incredible anti-wrestling is going to be too much for Chandler, and I think Chandler is going to have himself an FDA approved knockout here. So that's about to happen.
I am kind of curious if Chandler is able to get him down, because he is a very smart fighter when it comes to getting tagged, like in his fights with Eddie Alvarez.
Right.
Like he got
those takedowns when he needs it, when he gets clipped.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I just don't think that he's going to be able to pull that off against Gaethje. But it would make things interesting if he's able to do that. All right, fellas. We have another banger of a fight. Granted, a unnecessary rematch at this time, if you ask me. Rose Namajunas, the current strawweight champion, against the former champion that she dethroned, Weili Zhang. Ben, who you got?
I'm leaning Rose here just to make Zhang look overreaching and outclassed on the feet, and if it goes to the ground, to be able to sweep and submit her. Like, I have Namajunas by finish within the first 2 rounds.
Jay, who you got?
Ben's impressively brief. I feel like I'm bloviating. I too am going for Thug Rose, because there was something I saw when she fought when she fought Joanna Jacek and knocked her out, and then came back in the second fight not expecting to get that, and fully prepared and fully versed to handle the fight wherever it goes. And as a result, was sharper on the feet, was able to outland a woman who is known for her ridiculous ability to put strikes on you, like a female Max Holloway. I see that happening too. I see that Rose will come back sharp as an axe. I don't know if she'll be able to get the kill shot this time. And I think that's okay with her. I think, in fact, she might feel more comfortable outworking Weili Zhang for 5 rounds and getting that decision. I can see Zhang getting a really a second round, like a really good second round, and people start going, "Oh boy, here we go. This is what we expected to see." But I can see Thug Rose, who is still so incredibly inexperienced in her fight career, doing what she's doing at this level is just miraculous to bowl. She's 10-4. You know, there aren't many more fighters that you know, not far into their career, so to speak. She's 29, that are on the highest of the highest level. For how long has she been here? Since she fought Michelle Watterson 4.5 years ago? That's crazy that she's been fighting the best of the best of the best. And it breaks my heart that she's going to have to beat the champion twice to get her belt back. But I got Rose by decision.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Jay. I think we've seen an example of what Rose looks like in a rematch after a quick knockout. One thing that we did see in the first meeting between these two, the speed differential was astounding. Rose is light years ahead of her as far as speed is concerned, and I think we're going to see that again. It may not lead to the knockout blow, but man, it's going to lead to a lot of in and out movement. It's going to lead to a lot of peppering shots. It's going to lead to a lot of frustration on Weili Zhang's part. And I think as the frustration mounts, the mistakes start happening more often. Rose, I think by the third round, I think this will be pretty clear cut who's going to win this one. And I got it by decision. So Thug Rose retains.
And the loss affected Weili Zhang. You notice? Have you seen her lately?
And she got the haircut like she did what Rose did when she lost and cut her hair. So I'm telling you, my daughter was in my hands crying at the time, because otherwise I would have tweeted about that when I saw it. I was like, oh man, she got a haircut. Yeah, so I think Weili is coming in with a head full of steam, which is the wrong approach to have against Namajunas. And keep in mind too, Trevor Whitman, who is a shoo-in for Coach of the Year at this point, has been crafting masterful game plans and doing masterful things with his students. We didn't see what he really had up his sleeve for Zhang. So I think we're really going to get a showcase this time. All right, gentlemen, now we have the main event, which yet again, another unnecessary rematch, but it promises to make my heart smile if my result comes true. That is Kamaru Usman, the welterweight champion, making his defense against former title challenger and former interim champion Colby Covington. Ben, who you got?
Speaking of Trevor Whitman, speaking of people you don't want to face in a rematch, I think their first fight it's going to go down as Colby Covington's high water mark. The fact that he took a man who will go down as an all-time great to the wire like that, because he really did give Usman his toughest fight in his UFC streak, but it's going to be different this time. This is going to be Anderson Silva versus Chael 2. This is going to be Usman versus Masvidal 2. Usman's going to make it look easy this time.
Jay, who you got?
I am really happy that you did specifically point out Anderson Chael too. And the first fight was all the way down to the last second, and the second fight was he figured it out. And I am firmly on the side of Usman has not only figured this fight out, but that this is the fight that Colby had last time with Usman will be kind of like how Alexander Gustafsson's fights are the best fights. The best moments he had are when he lost to John Jones or when he lost to Daniel Cormier. And Colby Covington's best moment here probably will be when he made it to the 24th and change minute with Usman, because that's not happening this time. I don't see this going maybe early into the third round if Covington's able to keep it together. Some fighters have like, they have the kind of get your attention power. Then there's stinging power, but it isn't quite enough to put you down all the way, but it's like an accumulation of damage. And then there's that power that you kind of reel after you get hit by it. And Usman has developed that in a very impressive, very surprising way. The way he hit Masvidal the second time they fought was different than they fought less than a year before. I don't know how, whether it was just the sheer technique, his angles, the ability to get to land the shots that he wanted to land, but you could see the reactions when he landed on Masvidal. Gilbert Burns had him on skates early in the first round, but then Usman gathered himself, and his jab was a more powerful strike than Usman's looping hook. And that is dangerous. I see probably a lot of blood from here, maybe from here, maybe from here, from all of the here, because that jab is going to set up really horrible things. And Colby Covington, He's been out for a year. Let's not forget he's won one time since they fought, and that was against Tyron Woodley, who became an international boxing sensation with a new tattoo. That's what he's done. That's the extent of what he's done since that fight, and he's done a lot of this. And you don't want to do a lot of this to Kamaru Usman, because he'll do what he did last time and make it so that suddenly you're not going to be able to do this because your mouth is stuck like this.
Yeah.
And this is not the title fight I would have picked, because Usman's going to make it messy and Covington's going to be in trouble. He'll probably be hurt in the first round.
Yeah, I'm with you guys all the way. This is going to be an Usman showcase. I think so. With the first time they met at UFC 245, one thing that became very clear is how similar a fighter they are. Like when we kind of knew that coming in. The thing that separated them in that fight was that Usman just does everything a little bit better. He's got more power. The gas tank might be similar, but it's not like Colby can overwhelm him with pace like he does with everyone else. The technique and striking just a little bit better. So everything that Colby Covington does, Usman did a little better. But that's the old version of Kamaru Usman. This version of Kamaru Usman has become a world beater. This is a man who has it all figured out, has it all dialed in. His technique is nearly perfect. The gas tank hasn't stopped. The conditioning is still there. The power has increased exponentially. This is a man who has put it all together. And quite frankly, I don't see any version of Colby Covington having anything to offer this version of Kamaru Usman. He didn't have the previous version of Usman figured out enough to get the victory. This improved version runs over him. Absolutely runs over him. And Jay, I just briefly want to speak to something that you said on there that I wholeheartedly agree with about how incredible his power differential has changed. Like he's just hitting so much harder now. It's not just that he hits harder, it's just that he hits harder at the right times. This isn't a guy who, we've seen this happen with wrestlers many, many times over, where they discover, oh, I've got a big right hand, and they fall in love with that, and they chase it and they chase it and they chase it, and they forget what got him to the dance in the first place. Usman has not done that. Usman has the perfect timing with these power shots. That Masvidal knockout was set up by beautiful, beautiful timing, beautiful patience in order to pull that technique off. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a different animal. This is not the same guy who fought at 245 to a pretty close fight up until the broken jaw and the KO. This is someone who is going to break that jaw pretty much when the bell rings. I'll be very surprised if Covington makes it out of the second round. This is going to be a slaughtering, and I'm here for it. Happy to see Colby get beat down. All right, gentlemen, that's going to do it for this edition of Unleash. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Ben, for joining the show again. The Walkout Network, you guys make this show so much fun to do. Can't wait till next week to discuss everything that we've talked about here as far as our predictions are concerned and whatever stupid other things happen in the sport. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.